Welcome back, everybody, to the Construction CEO podcast. I am your host, Jonathan Core, and today I have Jake Hatfield, who is the president of DB General Contractors. Welcome to the pod.
Thanks for having me, Jonathan. Appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's really interesting. Obviously, you just made a note about the whiteboard behind you. Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of different phrases. What is it exactly that's written up here?
So we tend to make fun of the typical office jargon that gets thrown around. So you can see some of it back there. Why don't you read one of those off?
Yeah. Park it.
Yep.
Synergies. Huddle up internally.
Yeah.
Please advise. For a quick second, I'm like, please abuse. I'm like, okay, no, that's a please advise. Circle back. Table this. Pivot. That's soft PTO.
Yeah,
What
that's
does
a
that
new
mean?
one. Hey, it was the first time we'd heard of it too. So we've put it up there.
At my last company, and you know what we should do? Wow, that's a. Well, what started that?
Well, we have our weekly meetings in here, usually every Tuesday, and everybody in here has a great sense of humor. So keep it light. And with somebody brought one of those. We were joking about it one day, and I said we need to keep a running tab on the board and see how many we can come up with. So, and then we come in our meetings and we got to use them.
Yeah,
you got to use at least one of those words up there.
Yeah, just force it.
Oh, yeah.
So I want to start here. So I know that you have a background in the trades. You know, you're president of DB right now, but you're no stranger to the field. And so the first thing I want to start off with is this. So obviously the trades have been spoken about a lot recently, and the few I guess points I want to make. One of them is Jensen Huang of NVIDIA says plumbers and electricians are going to make six figures. BlackRock just dropped $100 million to train 50,000 trade workers. OpenAI partnered with building trade unions, and Lowe's just wrote a $250 million check for the trade. So I'm just curious, like, what are your general thoughts on the massive focus and investment people are making specifically in the construction industry right now?
I think it's great, and I think with AI and how it's going to be used in the industry, obviously it's going to have a lot of benefits in the construction industry, obviously all the other fields. However, there is still a need for people to do things and assemble things and build things with their hands. So, it was great news. It's great news for us because I think there's a lot of opportunity in this industry, especially for the generations coming up. And I know there's been a lot of back and forth over the years of, trades not maybe getting the notoriety they should, just because everybody's, going to school, getting a 4-year degree and doing their thing, which is awesome. But there's a lot of opportunity in this industry. And I think, again, with AI and its abilities, from what I could tell, there's going to be a lot of use for it. But I think there's going to be a need for people to still build, still fix your toilet, you name it. Anything trade related is going to be that's going to be a hard one to come up with a fix for with a robot or intelligence. I think it's going to be an opportunity for people. And I'm excited about it. Yeah. Honestly, I think, I know I'm proud to be in this industry, and I've got a 15-year-old and a 17-year-old, and I'm seeing their generation. There definitely is an interest with their generation, as they're observing all of this information they're being given day to day. They're savvy. They're seeing what's up, and I'm hearing a lot more of them considering getting into the trades, which is great. We need it right now. We really do. We kind of went through a bit of a lull, and there's been a lot of shift and movement, and I am excited for what's next.
100%. Yeah. Well, and it's, I don't know. It's just, we're in a really interesting sort of sometimes awkward and even too uncertain for certain folks. I mean, I have friends who are in higher ed, and they're like, I'm worried about our graduates. Like all these entry level roles are being taken up by AI, like AI. It's just, it's even to have a friend who's a professor at UW and in computer science, and he just talks about, he's like, man, they're all using AI to do this code, but they don't understand the fundamentals of what they're doing. And so when he's like, hey, okay, you gave me this great code, talk me through it. It's like, I don't know. It's like, no, you have to understand the fundamentals in order to eventually do that. And so it's like, there's just a lot. I mean, you're hearing about, Facebook or, or Meta in this case, Microsoft, they're all just cutting people. And then the trades are just like, people are starting to run towards the trades or explore. And even too, I know, like you mentioned, your 15, 17-year-old, there's this welding contractor out of Utah, met him at a conference, and he posts a lot of content specifically like on TikTok and Instagram. And he's like, man, I have like 4 to 5 high schoolers reaching out per week and saying, hey, can I come work for your company? Can I come in? Yeah. Mainly because they're like, I don't want to work in front of a computer. I have no desire. And that's honestly what I feel like, in my perspective, has been sold for the past, 50 years. Is go to college and do that whole thing. And some people are probably miserable.
Yeah, absolutely. I've, about 5 years ago, as I was, kind of hitting a different evolution and trying to do what we're doing here, you start forecasting and projecting and trying to understand what the future looks like and what we had been seeing in our industry as far as labor, generations. I got to be honest with you, there was a point where I'm like, man, we got a problem, and you hear it echoed, you hear people talk about it, but when you're running a business and stuff, you really start to look at that and kind of go, what, once this generation phases out, what's next, And I honestly, like I said, 5, 6 years ago, as we were looking into it, it's like, yeah, I think we're going to have an issue here, but I have become more optimistic about it. And, however, I think it's really going to be up to us, kind of the folks that have been in the industry and in the trades to, really get back to the roots of the construction industry and focus on training and understanding what that looks like with this new generation. The means and methods haven't changed a whole lot. I mean, they have, but the end of the day, things are still being applied the same way, and it's going to be really up to us to figure out how best to teach and groom these people and recruit and train. And it may be different than, how we used to do it, but I still think getting back to the fundamentals of good mentorship. Yep. I was fortunate enough to have really good mentors along the way, and they're still out there, obviously, but I have noticed there's a lot of distractions in our world. There's a lot of distractions in our industry, and the generation that's out there running work right now, they're distracted. They're doing their thing. They got a lot of moving parts and pieces, and, getting back to really mentoring people, I think, is going to be key. Yeah,
100%. And like for me, it's interesting because obviously there has been a lot of bashing towards the trades. It's like, okay, this is just a job and things like that. And even to, I had a friend post on LinkedIn recently. He's in residential landscape construction, so they're redoing complete backyards. And I can't remember how he said it exactly, but somebody was walking by with their kid, and the kid was fascinated with what's going on. It's like, the mother or something like that, something along the lines of like, oh yeah, well, that's just like I can't remember, something along the lines of like, that's not like a real job. And he heard it and he didn't say anything, but it's just like, one, it's like, obviously there's people who still employ these individuals. And so the reason I say this is you're a very unique story. And I love talking to executives who were in the trades, because it's like, oh, hey, just because that's where you started doesn't mean that that's where you stay. And there are individuals who end up excelling and end up becoming general supers or, these high level positions within companies. And so I say that to say, like, what's your starting point? Like, how did you get, like, was construction always the plan, or like, how did you get your entry point?
Yeah. I was never a great student. School just didn't agree with me. And, worked my way through it. I got into, when I was in high school, and obviously there, you got a bunch, that's that point in time where you're starting to talk about what your career path is, what school you're going to go to. And that just never resonated with me. I think I was fortunate enough to be surrounded by, I came from a blue collar family and hardworking. We had a great life, and I was fortunate enough to be surrounded by a bunch of really hardworking men and women. And I had a few mentors in my family. And honestly, I just respected what they did so much. They all did different things. We had truck drivers, we had heavy equipment operators, you name it. And I don't know, I just thought I had so much respect for, listening to their stories. I liked the way they lived their lives. And it really drew me, it kind of drew me in. And so, had a couple opportunities in high school to go to work, graduated and went to work and had a neat opportunity to work with doing, installing automatic swimming pool covers. And so I started doing that. And then we had a family friend who was an architect for a large firm in town. And, I was 18 and we're family dinner or whatever. And we started talking about commercial construction. And he was kind enough to kind of, he threw it out there for me. I had to kind of earn it. He threw out the opportunity like, hey, if you're really interested in that, I will kind of get you set up or introduce you to some guys in the industry. And, you take it from there,
Yep.
And so that's what he did. He set me up with an old timer superintendent for a big company here in town. And basically they would just, they would give me little tidbits, but I had to kind of follow it and earn it and put in the work. So anyway, I liked the idea of commercial construction. I was seeing high rises go up, and I was seeing all those guys in all different capacities on a job site. I wanted to be part of that. Yep. And I just had so much respect for them. And so again, I just had some fortunate to have, people along the way that have helped kind of guide me throughout that process over the years. So started out doing kind of heavy commercial construction as a laborer, got a job, worked really hard, saw the opportunities. I genuinely wanted to do it. I think that's the key. You have to want to do it. You have to be passionate about it. It's like anything, you got to be passionate about it. But I was, as a laborer, I was always staying late with the superintendent, learning layout. And I wanted to learn as much as I could. And so I think people saw that. And I think that's the point throughout this interview here too, that, it goes back to hard work and putting in the time. And there are people out there that see that. And if you're consistent with it, they'll help, they'll take you under their wing and help you through the process. So started out, again, heavy commercial, and had some good mentors along that pathway. And then I just kept getting opportunity. The harder I worked, people would see it, and they would put me in different positions. And those same people sponsored me through an apprenticeship program. And honestly, I worked from laborer to a carpenter for a while, ran jobs as a superintendent, went into project management, and then went into ownership essentially at some point. It's a long journey. Yeah. But, I think the key there is I wanted to do it, and I worked hard. Hard meaning putting in enough effort to where it's noticeable. Yeah. The right people notice it, and there are enough good people around that see that, and they want to help you. And so that's why I love this industry so much, because I'm sure, when I was going through school, I'm sure I had teachers that probably didn't think I was going to, do anything. And the people I've met along the way in this industry, in this journey, the opportunities that I've had just by working hard. I don't know. I don't know that there's a lot of industry out there that is comparable. I really don't think so. So yeah, started at the very bottom and just worked and stayed consistent with that. And fortunate enough to have those people along the way that, in every little aspect, whether it was superintendents or people in accounting, every little pathway, I met some amazing people and frankly, they're who helped get me to where I'm at today. And I'm still new in this journey too. I'm, I guess 25 years into this. I'm still learning. I'm still trying to figure it out. But it's been an awesome journey to start at the very bottom and get kind of to where I'm at. I don't often reflect on it, because we're just grinding.
Yeah.
But that's the one thing I share with some of the guys that are trying to figure out what they want to do. I mean, again, you got to be passionate about it. You got to want to do it. But God, if you're willing to work and be patient, there is so much opportunity in this industry. And I think now more than ever, people are looking for that next generation of leaders, of owners. There's opportunity out there, big time. Tons of opportunity. So, but again, it goes back to coaching people through the process of kind of having the endurance to stick with it, and I think that's where a lot of people fall off is, if they just don't like it, they don't like it. But yeah, there was lots of years where it was a grind, and there was lots of years where I questioned if this is what I wanted to do. Late 20s, early 30s, you're trying to figure out, like, man, do I want to do this? And it could be circumstances of what you're dealing with that make you think, like, I don't know that I want to do this. But
do you remember, like thinking back to that season for that thought, going through that? Do you remember what was going on around that season and what ended up getting you to be like, all right, let's do this?
Well, it was probably just me being naive and young, and I remember, I remember a point where I think I had maybe 10 years in the industry. And I think part of my journey has consisted of, because I was willing to put in that extra work. And I have the same problem, here. You tend to be taken and put into positions maybe you're not ready for, which, creates a lot of anxiety and stress because you just don't know what you're doing. You'll figure it out. You'll stay with it. And I think that's what people see in you. So they put you in those positions. It was, I think 10 years in, I realized I have no idea what I'm doing. at year 3 as a laborer, and had some, somebody gave me some carpentry tasks, and I had been on a big job site for long enough. I think I remember feeling like I kind of knew what I was doing. And then at year 10, I had this revelation. I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing, because there's so much to it.
It's interesting you say that, because like for me, I'm 32. I recently turned 32, and I realize now I have a son, I have a family, and I just realized a lot, even too when I was younger. I just overthought a lot.
Oh, I'm terrible at that.
Overthinking, and so that's where
it's one of my strongest suits, but one of my weakest too. Yeah.
But like, it's funny that you said naive. It's just like, I feel like part of me is just like, I'm running. I'm like, okay, well, whoa, what's going on? And then it's like, hey, just continue along the path. Cause I mean, I'm sure other people have just been like hesitant, and maybe there is a growing pain, cause there is pain when you grow as an individual. Like, I don't like this. Let me go back to something else, or let me just downgrade to, the level that I was at. And eventually, I mean, some people just get bored or things like that.
Yeah.
But one of the things I do want to touch on is, like, you'd mentioned, is like people will give you the opportunity, like little bits here and there throughout the beginning part of your career. but it was on you to go and actually go do it. And it's interesting because I feel like, a lot of the executives or leaders I've talked to share similar sort of stories where they're like, hey, somebody just gave me an opportunity and they say, okay, it's up to you. And so more recently I heard this story of this individual who like went to music school, and it's a pretty prestigious music school. And then he met somebody at a studio, and the guy at the studio said, hey, if you want, I can show you how to finish this 4-year degree in 2 years, but you have to come by my studio tomorrow at 9 a.m. Oh, okay. And he ended up showing right on time. And he's like, now knowing him, he's like, if I was like 10, 20, 30 minutes late, he probably wouldn't have helped me.
Right.
But he was surprised. He's like, oh, you came. And he ended up actually showing him exactly how to do it, mainly because he was a professor. He's like, here are the core things that you need to learn, and you can actually test out of these things in order. Like, I'll teach you them within 3-4 sessions. I'll teach you everything you need to know on this, and you'll be able to do it. And he did it. And so it's interesting. I'm curious to see, like, what have you seen now in your role as a leader? And what does it look like for you to be in a mentor type role, whether it's with existing team members or maybe even other people outside of your network who you know, and potentially give those, maybe I'll call them breadcrumbs to, and then see what they do with it. I'm curious, like what you're seeing with maybe the younger generations, whether it's millennials, Gen Z, obviously the upcoming generation, but just what are you seeing from your perspective?
Well, this is an area that I've made some catastrophic mistakes in over the years. And, I'm always looking for, I guess, the good in people. And I definitely see when you have people that are putting in the extra effort, that are standing out, that definitely, rings a bell for me, and I kind of pay attention to that. I'll give you 2 scenarios. So I've had a lot of great people over the years here that I felt were capable of so much more. I saw it in them, and I don't know that they saw it in themselves. And the mistake I made was not opening up that dialogue with them to see what they actually wanted. I would kind of fast track them based on what I was seeing, their potential. Mm-hmm. And, most people, it's hard for people to communicate back to, your leadership sometimes. They don't want to say something, or they're afraid to say they don't want to do it. What that would result in is somebody would just get burnt out and finally come in one day and go, I don't want to do this anymore. And you're kind of going, well, what are you talking about? Like, you're so good at what you do. Yeah. I never wanted to do this. And you're kind of going, I was, shocked. And you're kind of going, are you, what? You didn't want to do this? No, I never wanted to be in that role. And I realized, like, oh, I saw something in you that I thought you'd be great for this. The step I skipped was asking you what you want. Do you want to do that, or do you want to stay here in this position? Because maybe they're completely happy in that role. So getting back to kind of mentoring another generation is going to, obviously the folks that stand out, that appear to want to do this, that like this industry, that are fired up about it, that maybe are showing extra effort, and that's, always an indicator of somebody that's liking what they're doing, is having that conversation with them and just kind of, understanding at that moment in time, like, what do you see for yourself? Some guys, it's funny because some guys will be like, I want to take your seat. I'm like, great, let's figure that out, But I've also been shocked. Some people just want to do a little more than they're doing. And if they're happy with that, awesome. But you have the other, that other group that has a grand plan. They want to go as high as they can go. And so we put together a little bit of a plan, and we just communicate. We're very simple here. It's a lot of communication. It's sitting down, having just a conversation about the plan, and just, I think, setting the expectations is going to be key, because it is a journey. And it takes a while. And, a guy that's in his 20s, late 20s, that's been doing this for, say 5-10 years, they may have enough experience to be doing just fine. but they also may want to skip 10 steps to get to the spot. And I think it's just having an open dialogue about expectations of how we see this pathway going and then working together to get there. But it's patience. I think that's the biggest thing is patience and having the endurance to fight through all those times, even the times where you're like, I don't want to do this anymore. That job, that situation, that client, if this is going to be the way it is, I don't want to do it. You got to sit down and kind of, talk through that a little bit. And I think it's those moments determine whether you're cut out to continue the path forward.
Yeah.
Because once the dust settles, you move on to the next thing, you talk it out, a year goes by and it's all good. And some people maybe that's the deciding factor. Maybe they've been on the fence about doing this, and maybe that was that one situation, that one job, that one customer interaction was enough to go, I'm done. So patience, a lot of communication, and a realistic pathway. And again, it goes back to patience and having some endurance. It doesn't happen overnight. I think part of what makes this work, if you're starting at the bottom or you're hopping from another career into this, is it is complex. There's a lot to this. There's a lot of nuance to every little aspect of construction we do. And if the people are willing to be patient and again have the endurance, then it works out great.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
well, and I mean, you're hitting on a few interesting pieces. The one I wanted to ask, this is just my own curiosity. So with the conversation you mentioned, I assume it was obviously it sounded like a hypothetical, but it sounded like a real story. So my question is, somebody says, "Hey, this is actually not what I want to do." What happens from there, or what happened? Just curious. Yeah.
In my experience, I've had a few, unfortunately, not a ton, but a few. Mm-hmm. And again, it's a weird dynamic because I'm seeing the potential in somebody,
yeah,
and wanting them to succeed.
Yeah.
That succession plan is not theirs. But usually what happens is it gets to a point where it's too late. And both circumstances in this situation, it just got to a point where we're all busy. It's hard to keep tabs on everybody's emotion every day, all day. And again, most people, we can say it all we want. I do it all the time. It's like, I got to create an environment where people feel comfortable to come in and have conversations. And I think we do. It's a work in progress, but it got to a point where there was no turning back. It had just worn on them for a year. Finally, it was just they're internalizing it. It wasn't what they wanted to do. And then over that course of time, they've decided their head's going somewhere else. They're thinking about another option. They're thinking about moving. And by the time they finally draw up the courage to come in, it's done.
Yep.
There's no walking them back. And so I had a couple of those that were just monumental learning moments for me. And I wasn't being malicious about it. I was shocked. Yeah. And I was also kind of bummed that there was a piece of communication missing, which was sitting them down and going, do you want to do this? We move really quickly in our industry. Yep. I think I mentioned to you, the type of work we do is we do hundreds of projects a year. It's quick. It's, quick turns. Yep. And we're moving. And sometimes it's hard to pull people in and have those conversations. But in that circumstance, it was too late. We missed the opportunity. They'd made their mind up. They were worn out, worn thin, and they were done. And that was it.
Man, and that's just such a bummer because honestly, I do believe whether you're small, medium, or large size company, I feel like that's what you face at all levels. And as much as you want to try to create an environment where, hey, just if it's a bad day, bad week, bad season, you're just let me know.
Yeah.
And because I could see how all that just running through in their mind, like, man, okay, I don't like this, but what if I say this and then this? And it's just like kind of going back to the overthinking. And then finally you need to give yourself something to grab onto. So eventually you just decide to make these decisions, like, and then you sell yourself. And then it sounds like, maybe in this case, it took a year for them to get to that point. But finally when they're there, just, hey, here's where I'm at. And that's kind of it.
Yeah. There was no talking that particular there was no talking back, talking that one down. It was done. And you could just tell as you, retrospect, think about it. And I'm like, man, I look back at all the things we'd kind of tasked that person with and thinking like, man, if that's not what they really wanted to do, we really just hammered it home, So it was a good learning experience for me. And, at the end of the day, everybody, I'm sure that person's happy and maybe it was the right decision and it was the best decision they ever made. Yep. So I'm there to support that too.
Yeah, for sure. So. Yeah. And I'm sure also too, even as a leader, cause I mean, you're obviously, leading a team of people, and just to see in others like, hey man, you have so much potential, but if they don't see it, I mean, it's just tough.
It's tough. Yeah. And there's a more of that. I think that's that piece going back to how we mentor this next generation is trying to key in on that stuff. And I'm sure there's plenty of business folks out there that have got it dialed in. But that's been a tough one for me. Cause I you see something, you see a flicker and you're just like, that person's got that X factor.
Yep.
But like you said, if they don't see it in themselves, it's a tough battle. And, sometimes coaching and sitting them down and connecting with them on a personal level and explaining what you're seeing. Maybe they've never had somebody notice that. Yep. And maybe that's a new feeling for them. And they're kind of going, hey, you're seeing something in me. We've had some people here that are still, that have never had that. And so, it is challenging. Yeah, for sure.
It definitely is. One of the other things you mentioned too is like, there are some, individuals who are like, hey, I want to be in your seat. Like I want to be in that. I'm curious because, leadership is such a dynamic thing, as you kind of have to tailor it to the individual. You can't just like group it all. It's like everybody's very, different. And even if they are, let's say, more introverted, well, they may have their quirk in this way. And so you're like, it's like, how do I communicate to this person? Not in a way that, I'm just trying to share knowledge. How do I get them to actually hear what I'm saying? And so I'm curious, like, obviously you mentioned with the individual who may be a little bit more like reserved or may not see their value or their potential. But then you have the opposite where it's like somebody who may be a little bit more like, oh, hey, no, I'm going to figure this out, super hungry. So I'm curious for you, like, how do you go about leading those ambitious, individuals who are hungry and like, because I would say that, typically it's like, okay, I just run 1,000 miles as as much as you want. But at the same time, this is from what I've seen sometimes is you could be running 1,000 miles an hour in the wrong direction.
Right.
Or maybe, and so there's bumps along the roads and, if you're going that fast and all of a sudden, something throws you off. So I'm just curious, how do you go about leading those sort of individuals who are a little bit more ambitious and hungry?
Yeah. And we've had a few too, and they're moving and shaking and hungry. Like you said, they're hungry. Every business is different. And, I think it comes down to going back to setting expectations in a reasonable pathway. People, I have noticed there's a tendency to want to skip a bunch of steps. And they may feel like if I've got to run through those steps here, I'll go somewhere else and jump some steps. And again, all good. But I think setting expectations of like, hey, here's that path. You're on a rocket ship right now. You're doing great, but you need to spend time doing this. Then you need to spend time doing that. And that could be a 6-10 year endeavor. And I think that's the piece that I've recognized I have to be better at breaking down for people. Because if they don't have if they don't have a pathway or they don't have a roadmap, that's, you're having a hard time kind of keeping up with them. Yeah. I'm always wanting to kind of make sure that they're satisfied and they're getting enough and they're feeling like they're excelling. But doing that in a manner where they're not jumping too fast. Yep. But I also say that, this is coming from somebody that was always put in a position that was probably a couple steps out of their league, to figure out. So, as I sit here with a little more experience and I look back at how I would coach somebody, that's how I would do it. But I also sometimes putting people in an uncomfortable position is very telling. And the guys, the people that excel and have a plan or they're on the rocket ship, sometimes they do great with that. And you're like, wow, you handled that well, and you're prepared for probably a little more than I was expecting. So every individual is so different, and I guess that's, long answer to your question, but just trying to analyze every person and figure out the best method for each, and I failed at all of it. I've had the guys on the rocket ship and they were too much horsepower for us. And they went off and, I look at their LinkedIn profile and they've been at 10 jobs and it's cool. I'm sure they're learning a ton along the way and maybe that's what they want. So it's, trying to cater. And when we've been patient here and we don't have a lot of turnover. The people that are here have kind of found themselves here for a reason. And so that makes it a little easier. But it does test the coaching when you have a variety of individuals that are on different pathways. So I wish I had the right answer to it. It's just analyzing every person, sitting them down and trying to figure out how best to support them.
For sure. And each individual is that I agree. It's a case by case scenario, but also too, there is the culture piece for every company as well as saying the DNA of okay, maybe each, we're not asking you all, because you're all your own unique individuals, but then there are these qualities that, hey, we, at DB, we possess these qualities. I'm just curious, what are some of those, and naturally, when I talk to executives about this, it's easy to just talk about core values, for sure. And if that's what describes it, great. But I'm just curious from you, knowing what people that maybe, like you said, a lot of horsepower, or people who maybe, may not see their potential but have potential. What are those few core things that to be true? Hey, somebody here at this company has to possess these few things, regardless of who you are.
Yeah, I mean, we're very. I don't want to dumb this down at all, but we are very simple, and I think people who are honest. I think we all have, good enough instincts when you're talking to somebody, whether they're being honest with you or not. People that understand, what it is we're trying to do as a team. We've got people that have come from all different industries here, and they weren't maybe qualified for the job they were interviewing for, but they seemed like, really good people that seemed like this was a great place for them, and we just worked with them and trained them and got them into the role they're in now. But we're simple, some people just like simple, and I don't want to make that sound like we don't have all the bells and whistles, because we do, but there's a lot of folks here that have come from kind of more corporate structures, and we have a lot of autonomy here. It's very, we're very to the point and basic and simple and
direct.
We have bells and whistles if we need it, but we're not all about just creating a company because of the bells and whistles. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah.
So I think people appreciate that, and it gives them room to work.
Yep.
And I think that's the biggest thing, is just give them room to work. My job is to just get the logs and sticks out of the way so they can be successful. And it's very to the point. Yep. We just communicate. I think they like that. Yeah. And I like I said, I found over the years that people that have found their way here have had exposure to other industries, other corporate structures, and they've found this style refreshing.
That's great.
And so I think that's who we are.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, 100%. Well, and I even think, what was the individual that took our photo at the front?
Mac.
Mac.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep,
Mac.
yep.
So it's just I got a sense of it. You just walk up, hey Mac, take a photo. Can you take a photo for us?
Yep.
It wasn't like, oh hey Mac, hopefully I'm not. It's just, hey, can you take a? Like it's just very like.
Yeah.
That's what it seems like. At least
we are that way. Yeah, respectfully.
Yeah, for sure.
But no, I guess we've just, and it's part of, I'm simple that way sometimes to a fault, and I got to kind of keep that in check. We use what we need to use, and we get our work done, and our goal is to focus on the construction part of it. And I think the people that are here
Yep.
that have had exposure to other ways of doing things or business models, they just like it. It fits better for them.
Yep.
So it's simple.
Yeah.
As we collaborate a lot as a team, we're a relatively small company. So, our structure is we all come in here and we make decisions together. And, there's a lot of communication throughout the day up and down the hallway. And again, they like that.
Yep.
They're part of it. I need them to be part of it. I rely heavily on their opinions, and, maybe they've got a different way of doing things than I'm, doing something. And, they just, that's just who we are.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, and
Simple.
it feels a lot like, just like it has kind of the field vibe of just being very authentic, real. Just, hey, just try to cut the BS and just, hey, let's just try to be helpful, useful, and serve clients, serve each other, all that sort of stuff. So, but the thing I was gonna go into, because obviously, like, knowing that you did come from the field, you mentioned laborer, carpenter, superintendent, eventually PM. What's the story of you landing here at DB? What's the story there?
Yeah. So, DB, Dwayne Bednarik, was the founder, and, I had met him through a gentleman I was working for who was a mentor of mine. And, I was out in the field at the time, and, DB was just starting out. And so, we connected. I think the gentleman I had been working for at the time was getting ready to retire. And, so there was a little bit of a connection there. And, I guess long story short, ended up, he needed a PM, and, it was an opportunity for me to do, I was running work at the time, and I felt like it was the next move in this journey. And so, I came on in 2009 or 2009, and just we worked together and did our thing.
Yeah.
And I can't believe it's been some time since 2009.
Yeah.
It's been crazy. But it's been a journey. It's been cool so far.
100%.
Yep.
So you come here and
I was, and
Yeah.
again, getting into that, didn't know what I was doing, but worked, just listened, paid attention, observed when I could, and figured it out. And we finally got things kind of up and running, and it was new,
Yeah.
and it was a tough transition. I, to this day, I think I have more pride in being a carpenter than anything. I really value, I just value those skills so much. And, I'll never forget when I was started in my apprenticeship program, the gentleman who kind of sponsored me into it and kind of was an advocate for me. He was like, you may decide to go out and do something else, but you will use these skills. What you learn, you'll have available to you for the rest of your life, and they may come in handy if you decide to go, do something else. Get into selling insurance, whatever.
Yep.
You'll always have this skill, and I think that's probably, the one thing I tell the young guys, like, whatever you decide to do, this is, what you're learning here. We sponsor guys through apprenticeship program here. And I said, just get through it, learn as much as you can, and it will serve you well throughout your life. So anyway.
Yeah, for sure. Well, so like, like you mentioned, is like 2009, 2010, you join. And I remember this because obviously you and I had a prior conversation to this. You come in and like, it's, describe like the work and just like, describe just that season.
Yeah, well, that was a tough time. Obviously, we were just kind of fresh into the recession, and so it was a challenging time. That era, we were doing a lot of, predominantly all the work we had was for the coffee giant here in town, and that era of construction work for them it's very fast paced. And
like how fast do you remember?
Like, you're turning projects in a week or two, and you're doing shifts at night, you're doing shifts during the day, high visibility, high scrutiny, and you're doing a lot of them at the same time. And so it was just crazy.
Yeah.
It was just insane. And sometimes I look back at it and I'm like, I don't know how we did it. And we weren't the only company out there doing it. There's a lot of guys, a lot of, very reputable groups here in town that have, done that and still do it. But it was huge learning experience, a lot of coordination, a lot of managing personalities, because things were so fast paced and you're doing odd shifts and it's high stress and it was just intense. And we did that for a long time. And, we don't do that as much anymore, but I'm thankful for the time I had doing that because it did teach me a lot. I met a lot of great people along the way. But it was nuts. It was crazy.
And how long was that like high, fast pace, like just go, go, go? How many years was that?
10.
10 years.
Yeah, at least 10 years. Just
wow.
Grind. Yeah. Boom, boom, boom. Quick 2-3 week, and you were usually fitting a lot of scope into those 2 weeks, basically, if you imagine going in to buy a cup of coffee, all that bar work in there, we'd do those in a night. You'd tear it out and it was intense. And so at the time it was just feeding the machine. Yep. It was a tense time in the industry, in the economy. So you were thankful to have it. But, looking back, we just burn people, burn people out. And so that was kind of a byproduct of that. So we decided we needed to kind of make some adjustments to salvage some of the staff that we really appreciated having. Yeah. And that takes time too, to kind of make those adjustments. And, it was a competitive market because there wasn't a lot of work. So, it was a crazy time. Yeah. But learned a lot.
Yeah, for sure. And I remember, you and I had this conversation, and it's still stuck with me to this end, to this day when we had our conversation initially, is, growth is good or more, but the bummer or the ramifications of losing good people is tough.
It is tough, but, the longer, as you go through evolutions of this process, I think I was mentioning to you us sponsoring folks into carpentry programs and stuff. I think at one point I used to think that, well, if we were going to invest in you, you're going to invest in the company, which means you're going to stay because it's a little trade. Yeah. It was not the right mindset. I think at the end of the day, I've had people here that I thought, if they went away, what are we going to do? And I've had a lot of people like that over the years, retired or whatever, critical roles. And you just figure it out. And after you do that for a period of time, you realize it will work out. And so when we have critical people leave, I've had really, when people leave, it's usually because they're moving or they're retiring. we've had people leave and come back. But if you're here and you leave, I mean, if you're here, I'm going to be happy for you no matter what. If you're part of this, that means that, you know, you deserve to be here. And if you decide that you're going to go do something else, I'm going to support you. I'm going to be happy for you no matter what.
Yep.
Because we'll figure it out.
Yep.
You know, and I never would, you know, that was tough for me to learn. It was a very stressful time when when things like that would happen. You're just like, oh my God, what are we going to do? And stress about it. But I don't anymore.
Yeah.
So just because it works, you figure it out.
Yeah, you figure it out.
You just figure it out.
And sometimes, it's with your back against the wall, but you figure it out, and that's where, like, this too shall pass. Eventually, this
it
will,
does. It's tough. It's a tough one to learn, and it's hard when you're going through it. But once you cycle through it and experience it enough, you just realize, like, okay, we'll figure this out.
And I just feel like a few things come into play. One of them is like critical thinking in those moments, and then also too, I think just creativity is like, okay, cool. Here's the hand that I'm dealt.
Yeah.
What am I going to make of this?
Yeah.
And then you just start to.
You just start doing it, and you make it happen, and ultimately it works out the way it was intended to work out.
Yeah.
And so it took a long time, but there's definitely peace in that now.
Yep.
And that's a good place to be because, my personality type, that was tough for a period of time where, you'd take it personally and you'd freak out. How am I going to do this? And it's just a different way of thinking about things. So, it's those steps in the journey that, I probably don't have to worry about that one as much because I know we'll figure it out.
Well, and the truth about it is like, taking it personally, like I've had this conversation several times with a few, folks in the podcast, but, leaders, executives, they're real people with real feelings and emotion. Like you're a human being. Like if somebody came up to you and said something to you that, it probably could affect you. I mean, depending on where you're at. But so I'm curious with that, you saying like learning to maybe not take things personally. Like what is that evolution of just like, because there kind of has to be, and maybe I could be wrong here, but there has to be a level of like stoicism where you're just like, this is just what it is. You're just taking it for the information that it is. And then you just go like, how do you go about like compartmentalizing that and taking next best action? Yeah.
Again, I think it goes back to just going through it a bunch and having the experience and maybe not there's a millions, I guess, scenarios and circumstances where I wish I would have handled things better, and being able to kind of reflect on that and kind of go, I'm not going to do that next time. There's no different when, somebody comes in and says, hey, I'm moving to Texas next week. And it could be one of your critical members that's on a project. And you just kind of go, hey, dude, I'm happy for you. What do you need from me? In the back of my mind, I'm going, okay, here we go, but, the reality of it is, who am I to stop somebody's plan?
Yeah.
And I, you just learn to figure it out. We're really good, and I think you have to be really good at just having contingency plans and having that in your head all the time. Plan after plan after plan. If this happens, I will do this. If that person goes, and I think as in this role, in this capacity, that's what I spend a lot of time thinking about, is just, it gets a little weird at times because you're creating scenarios that you're like, hey, that's a weird scenario I just created, but what if something happened to him and what am I going to do with this? It becomes a little second nature. And I think once you think through it and maybe you've had some of those scenarios and you figure it out and you solve the problem, it just becomes kind of second nature.
Yeah.
It has to be, because the reality of it is stuff is happening all the time.
Yep.
And I laugh and we laugh here, the construction projects are literally the easiest parts of our job, my job. They're on like, I don't want to say autopilot, but they are the easiest thing here. It's all the other stuff. It's keeping everybody moving, and everybody has different things they're dealing with inside and outside of work. It's unforeseen things that happen to people. I mean, it's constant, right? And so you're just trying to keep, again, having having plans in place, or at least in the back of your mind, like, we'll figure this out. We'll go over here, we'll go over there. I just live in that world now. I can't get out of it. That's just where I'm at. And I think that's where I have to be, because, I owe it to everybody here to at least be thinking of those things. Yep. And because I care about the outcome. And this isn't, getting back to, like, I think there's two styles of business approaches, and, like, there's a very transactional business approach where maybe you're just in it for a period of time to make as much money as possible. That's a different mindset. And you're not really focused on relationships. I think you're tending to use people as you need them to kind of get you to where you're trying to go. Yep. That's not us. And so I think that's hard. I've never experienced that other side, because that's just not how I'm wired. Yeah. But I have to believe that that's the easiest way to do business. And trying to be honest and fair and, check all those boxes, not only with your staff, but your clients, everybody involved, be honest with people. It's tough. It really is. Yeah. But I wouldn't trade, I have no desire to do it the other way. We've done just fine doing it the way we're doing it. But it adds those extra layers, and so.
Well, and I feel like that's what, like, makes life both really extremely hard. It's just like those ebbs and flows, but then also too what makes it very rich, or very, like, this is like, there's just like this. And I mean, I honestly equate it to, like, marriage. It's like there's some really hard seasons, and I'm like, holy moly. But then when it gets good, you're like, oh man, like I realize it can't always be good. That's just never how life is. And so you kind of have to take it, like, hey, this is just the season that we're in, but it will get better. Or also too, hey, it's really good right now, and we got to prepare for a rainy day. Like, it's always this ebb and flow. But I feel like that, when I look back, I'm like, man, I'm grateful for both, when it's really good as well as some of the harder pieces, because there's growth or learning and things like that as a result. And like you're saying, it would be easy to just look at people just like numbers and just churning, hey, I just need to do this, this, and this. We're just here to do this, and that's it. But I just feel like it's a very bland approach to not just business, but life.
I agree. Yeah. And I think the most monumental relationships we've developed here were during the hardest circumstances. Really tough scenarios where things either didn't turn out the way we all as a team thought they would, or ran into a big problem. It usually involves money or lack of communication, whatever it was. Throwing your cards on the table and being honest with the people you're working with and for. Again, that human connection where, when you really sit people down and show your hand, not that we're trying to, obviously hide anything, but you just kind of go, this is how we got here. Yep. You find people are more human than you think. Yep. And through that process of, struggling together, and they help you, you help them, that relationship, you just kind of create a bond that you didn't create because the project went so good. I mean, it's a great scenario. But we've created some amazing relationships through just some really hard times. So, but like you said, it's like our world is a moving target. I mean, nothing's consistent. You're constantly moving and adjusting and trying to figure out how to just keep things, flowing in the right direction and in a positive direction. And it's never consistent, ever. So, yeah.
Yeah, if anything's consistent, it's just that it's going to be inconsistent.
It's
just
totally
going to change. That's the only thing that's going to be consistent.
Yeah, we laugh because we are technically just like professional problem solvers. And that's what we do all day, every day. There's always things coming up. Never, nothing goes as planned. Workflow and projections are all over the map. You're just trying to, you're trying to find the zone and adjust every day as needed. So,
Yeah, for sure. So, knowing that you started as, a laborer in the field, you mentioned even too doing pull covers, things like that. In your mind, did you always have it saying, "Hey, I'm going to be an owner, be the executive at the top running a company"? Like, was that always a plan? And
well, it's weird. Yeah, I do actually. I do recall a time when that spark ignited for me that I wanted to do commercial construction.
Mm-hmm.
And I had talked to a superintendent again for one of these large companies, and he kind of walked me through like what somebody could make, throughout the process, and then getting up to his level. And I just remember that really sticking with me, like, because I didn't know what I was going to do, but this spark, I felt a desire to do this. And I do recall at that point kind of thinking like, I feel like I can take this as far as I want to. And it wasn't because I was unique in any way. I just saw an opportunity. I was able to work hard.
Yep.
I had that. And I was seeing the benefit of that in this industry, and wanting to learn and working hard and staying a little extra, staying late, and coming in early and volunteering to come in on a Saturday when no one else did. Like, I saw the result of that, and I was like, man, I think I can go as far as I need to go. And I had started a family really young. I got married really young. And so there was no time for me to play around with.
Yep.
It was like, it's go time.
Yep.
And so, I used that model all the way through, just work hard and be consistent and kind of read the room a little bit, and the things that other people didn't want to do, I would do. And there are people watching, and people notice. And I remember when I was a laborer, doing those types of things, and I actually had one of was the GM at the time for a big company, walk up and find me on a 10th floor of a building and come up and just personally just say, "Hey, I really appreciate what you're doing. I see what you're doing." And I was like, man, this is what I want to be doing. And I just thought that was really cool. And again, it wasn't because there was anything special I was doing other than just working hard and doing and taking the extra step. And I think I think those are the lessons we got to kind of reinstill in the young folks coming up. Yeah. Because I think that's been lost a little bit. Not because they don't want to, but I think they've been kind of told, I think there's this work-life balance scenario that's been presented out there, and which I obviously am an advocate of, but I think we need to get back to, what it takes, hard work.
Yep.
And what does hard work mean? It's not leaving every day at the time that, it can be.
Yeah.
But if you want more, there's opportunities for more. You just got to put in a little extra effort.
Yep.
So,
well, and it's interesting. I mean, I just, I'm a millennial myself, and so I see individuals of my generation who both work hard, or those who just do, just let me just do my job. And then also too, there's the other ones that also are also entitled and feel like they. I'm like, and it's interesting though, because I made a post about this on LinkedIn recently. Just something about like, it's so interesting how the most successful people that I meet, who we call quote unquote lucky, we're just working their ass off over and over. Like we're working like you were saying. Like there's a contractor I work with. He's like, and he's talking because he's building his company from the ground up, and he's just like, when I was working for a different contractor, I was staying late, like mainly because I was prepping for the next day. And he's like, And then when I got there early before anybody else, I was already putting out the fire. So by the time everybody got there, like everything was handled, and I was just always a step ahead. And literally, people would be like, "Man, you make this look so easy." Like, like he's like, nobody knows that I'm here early and I'm here staying late. Always just one step ahead, one step. Like and so his thing is he's like obviously trying to train up his team, to think and see things that way. But at the same time, I'm also seeing that not like, going back to what we were talking about initially, some people are like, hey, that's not the path I want to go. But for me, the recipe or the map to go from A to B, to go from laborer to executive is there. Like it's clear. It's like you were saying, stay late. And it's not just to say you stayed late. It's like, no, work on something productive. And if you have nothing to work on, what skills can you develop? Like what can you do to help in this area? Like find more problem, find something to do. And I know that that's been even true for me when because I struggled a lot too, like similar to you. Like I wasn't great at school. Like I in high school, I failed multiple classes and had to do summer school and had to do extra, stuff before and after school because I failed a lot of class. I just wasn't a good student. And I remember it was my senior year. I was, I took one AP class junior year, and I'm like, okay, well, some friends said this was easy, and I passed. I'm like, oh wow, I passed. And my senior year, I decided, I'm like, well, you know what am I capable of doing?
Mm-hmm.
And so to go from like, I was a kid who had extra reading classes, things like, because I'm sure I'm dyslexic, all these different things. I'm like, I wonder what would happen if I pushed myself this last year. And so I ended up taking, I think it was like, so UW offered a few classes at our school. So I took college English, I took college Spanish, those provided by UW. I took like AP government politics, AP statistics. I can't remember what the other AP class was. I had graphic design. And anyways, I was pushing myself. And I mean, I was getting very little sleep because there's a lot of homework. But by the end of the year, I'm like, oh wow, I did that. Like I mean, I graduated, which is great. I mean, it would have been, I would have failed. I would have been awful if I just failed my last year because then I would have to repeat or not be able to walk. But I just opened my eyes. I'm like, okay, I may not be the smartest person in the room, but if I'm willing to do more, it somehow works out.
And how good did you feel afterwards? Like you probably felt really accomplished and the gratification was probably off the chart. Like
100%
you did something.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. And that's the thing too, is like, I realized even for myself, like, going back to the younger generations is I was always so focused. I'm like, oh, I'm not really good at anything. I'm not really good at anything. I'm like, well, just go learn something. And the thing I decided to invest time in during high school was music. And I think I mentioned I'm a musician, and I went to music school on Saturdays. So I'd have, regular high school, and then Saturday all day, just music school. And I remember I initially joined because my dad signed me up. He's a musician. Mm-hmm. He's always wanted me to do it. And so I did it. And after like 2-3 months, I'm like, I'm not really improving. But then somebody kind of said a sideways comment to me. It's like, hey, what are you like? Why are you still here? Like, you're not good. And just that little chip on I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to do everything I can to prove you wrong.
Yep.
And so I start that. But through that process, I'm like, I actually enjoy this. Mm-hmm. And so what ended up happening, this 2-year course, I think realistically, I probably could have finished in, potentially half the time. But like, I basically my last quarter, I was just sitting in the back of class, mainly because anytime they would teach me stuff, I would go off and learn more. I would go watch more YouTube. I would just practice. Whereby eventually the last quarter, I was just sitting in the back of the room of each class because I'm like, I already studied this. And so they just said, hey, just focus on your last piece, which is, putting a song together and doing all that. It's like, just use the free time. I'm like, and it's not so. And so for me, I'm just like, I just became obsessed. Now also too, I realize, and I'm not sure if this has happened to you as well, is I also know that like having a chip on my shoulder, there's a shelf life for that. Like that doesn't last. I have to find something bigger than that, because proving people wrong is just a hamster wheel versus like, no, I love this and I want to keep getting better at this craft. And so therefore I'm going to continue to do it. And so that's what it eventually happened. But I'm just like, honestly, after that senior year, that just gave me the confidence to be like, hey, you do this and you just do it better, more efficiently. And even if you don't know nothing and you're committed to just learning more obsessively, you will figure it out.
Oh yeah.
And that's the lesson I've played over and over in my life. And so I guess with that, like, I'm just curious for you, like now knowing, there's probably been different motivations for you throughout your career. What is it now? Like, what keeps you going? What keeps you like, hey, let's go, it's a new day. Let's just start over as though we just reset everything and just start from the ground up.
Yes. I've actually had a lot of time to think about that one in this last year. The relationships we've built, friendships we've built with the people we work for. Most of our work is, I would say a majority of our work is negotiated. We are just having such a good time. We've kind of built the trust, and we've worked on a relationship over the years, and we've connected with customers and people that we work for that we have a lot of similarities, and we're just having such a good time helping and supporting them. And they're so good to us and thankful for our services. And, we have just become, we're doing everything we can to just shore them up and make sure they're successful, and they're doing the same for us. So that's been amazing. It's actually, been really rewarding. And the other piece is I have some really great people here at the company that have been with us for a long time, have raised families, started families, close to retirement. And I am just here to make sure that I create I'm part of creating a stable, predictable work environment for those people that have stayed here, that have contributed, that have been a critical part of our success. And so that's my goal. Whatever that means, however I can participate, whatever I need to do, I'm just here to kind of, like I said, clear a path. And, it's been a lot of fun. Yeah. There's been times where it hasn't been fun. But I think I wouldn't be feeling the way I'm feeling now if I hadn't experienced those times that weren't fun. Yeah, I'm getting to a point where I'm seeing maybe a different side of it, and it's really enjoyable. And again, I've been really enjoying the relationships that we've had with, a handful of people that we work for. We've kind of grown together. You've seen kids grow. I mean, it's just, it's a kind of I hate to say it, and I don't want to, the family thing, but good friendships. And, it's been fun, and like I said, I haven't always felt that way. Just haven't, I've had, periods of time where I'm just like, this is crazy. What am I doing? But it all has gotten me to this point where it's like, this is so rewarding. I've got a office full and a field full of really great people that share the same philosophy on how we build and maintain our relationships, our customers. Everybody just jumps through hoops backwards for each other on both sides. And I don't really want to honestly, I don't want to do business any other way now that I've experienced this. This is the path.
What it could be like.
This is the way. This is enjoyable. This is what it's about. So it's taken time to get here, but now we see what it's like, and now we have we know what the benchmark is and what it is for us. Yeah. And so it's been amazing. Yeah. It's been awesome.
And it sounds like, the way you describe your business now sounds very different than when you first joined the company, kind of in the middle of just like, hey, we're just like churning, like just project to project. And so my question is like, you don't just get to this point out of random. Like there are sequential steps and things that I'm sure changes and updates and improving things. What were some of those key moves that you made over the past, I don't know, what has it been like, 10 years ish since, since you became, owner in the company, like, what were some of those moves that began to like redirect?
Yeah, I think we, as a group, kind of recognized we needed some more, needed to be a little more versatile in the type of work we were doing. And so, again, that doesn't happen overnight. And so we kind of started moving towards some different directions, some different, different styles of work. And through that process, we'd meet people. And I think the biggest thing for me is I want to partner with people that kind of share the same, respect with regard to how we do business. Because that doesn't, if we're approaching it from a very authentic, transparent, honest point of view, and the end user, the folks we're working for, are not, it doesn't work out very well.
Nope.
And those get presented in all kinds of scenarios, and it typically comes down to like money. But when you find a customer that shares the same style of doing business, they're fair, we're honest, we're transparent, we can communicate, we can just admit when we're wrong. That style of business and those types of relationships are what we wanted to do more of. And so we would just build upon it. We'd find that client that we worked well with, and then we'd build a business around their needs, essentially. And then once they were taken care of and we felt like things were good, we'd move on to the next. And it just takes time. And so, over the course of 10 years or so, you just do that, and you keep you also have to position the company in a certain way to where you're not just having to always be reactive. And that was the big learning lesson for us is, having discipline to put the company in a position to be able for us to be able to make decisions and not just react because we had to, because it was all about cash flow or whatever. That was kind of a pivotal point where when we were able to start deciding who and what we wanted to do within reason, that kind of propelled us into a different arena. And we got to focus more on relationships, seeking out the type of people we want to work with, share the same values of doing business, build a business around their needs, and then we moved on. And we would replicate that over time. It takes time, and it's patience. But that was that moment where when we got the business to a point where we could stop and you didn't have to take every single job, because in the early days we were just, companies in its infancy, and you're just coming out of a recession. You're just trying to land work, and you're doing everything you can to do that. And, that moment where we were able to stop and say, let's be a little more selective about what we want to do, and, do some risk analysis. Is this the type of work we want to do? Is this project the type of project we want to do? Is this customer or somebody we want to do business with? We learned a lot through that process. And again, we learned who we do want to work for and who we don't. And so we've just been focused on being patient, building those relationships, finding the people that, like to do business the way we do business, which is transparent, honest, open. Obviously they're in it to make money. We're in it to make money. We both don't need to be greedy. You know what I mean? Like, let's find a balance. And we have, we have such an amazing staff and group of people here that, I think our reputation speaks, and we'll literally build a business around somebody. So, so that's a whole journey process to be able to get to this point. I guess through these past 10 years, have there been moments where, because obviously in the past 10 years, we faced a pandemic. That was huge, and it was, tough across the board. So, saying, hey, we want to work with people that obviously you like, but also too that you trust and that you want to be fair with, and, mutual stuff like that. That, in my opinion, that sounds great when things are going good, but when
things start to dry up or all these sort of things, eventually it's, like, okay, maybe we could, do this or that. Like over the past 10 years, have there been those moments where you're like, okay, we may need this and you turn it down? Or like, I'm just curious, like in those moments.
Yeah. So fortunately, we've been very consistent, for the last, I would say 10 years. I think you mentioned saying no. Like there have been times like saying no is sometimes what's needed. And it's not because you might not want to work for that person or do that project. You may really want to do it. You just might not have the resources for it. And you don't want to put the client and our team in a position to fail. So, but vice versa, like because of those relationships we've built, when things do get maybe weird, they've always gone to bat for us, and collectively we're all figuring out how to kind of keep the machine going. So it's not a guarantee, but it's a good plan. I mean, they go to bat, and, we really haven't experienced much of a slow time here, but we also are kind of strategic about how we do business. And so it's been a slower growth as opposed to, just double in revenue or triple in revenue in a year. Like it's just been a real slow, methodical growth, manageable. We're really cautious about our hiring practices. We really put a lot of energy and time into making sure if we're in a position or we think we need to hire somebody, we really analyze if it's really needed or if it's just a timing thing. So, I'm not dealing with 100 people here. I know there's, I've got plenty of friends and colleagues out there that are dealing with just that, where it's like, hey, the job shut down. I've got 100 people that I've got to do something with, or I just lay off. We don't have that problem. We're not that big. So, that makes it a little easier, but the slow times we lean on those relationships, and we're never kicking a customer to the curb. If it's just not if it's just not working well, we'll part ways cordially, and maybe it's just not a fit for us, but we never push anybody away. We'll just be honest with them of what we can and can't do. Because there's only so much we can do. We're not we only have so many resources. And so if they're willing to, be strategic with us and are willing to kind of wait a little bit, or we can move some stuff around, great. Otherwise you'll have to go to the next GC. So
you touched on a word earlier that's, I think, an interesting one, and work-life balance. It's become a big word. I would say maybe since even around like COVID, is just very different time. But I really think it started there mainly because people were working from home. It's like it was very blurred, like what's home and what's work and all that sort of stuff. And so I just think it's lingered, and I think aspects of it make sense. Like, but. So I'm saying this to say, you come from a season of 1 week, 2 week turnaround, like just constantly churning projects, to now, in my opinion, even to the way you've described it here and even in our offline conversation, it's like, man, Jake's got like a pretty well built, like beautiful business. It's like, hey, you have there's a lot of structure. There's a lot of reasoning behind this and the types of clients we work with, types of team members we take on. Even your own approach to growth and things like it, just very sound. It makes tons of sense. The potential, and I know you and I talked about this, but it's easy to start to get comfortable too. So I'm just curious, like, how are you thinking through that, knowing that, because you mentioned this too, to me offline, you're like, construction's not, easy. Like these workspaces aren't, environments aren't always, it's not going to be the warmest or the coolest or distance, things like that. Like, I'm just curious how, like, knowing that you've just put so much thought and effort into just building such a nice business and structure, how do you now navigate, pressure testing, team members and things like that in certain scenarios as you continue to grow?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's one I, obviously think about that all the time. It's hard because this machine never stops. And so, one thing that's a challenge for me is, and every key member really is important here. We don't have, these like flex departments where people can shore up other people. Like every person here is very critical. And so it's really challenging to kind of figure out how to shut the machine off and maybe cater to some continuing education for somebody, or the patience required to kind of maybe try them out in a new role. So we're getting better at it, but it is challenging. And again, it just comes down to communication as a team, and going through the review process and obviously we're talking daily. And people's personal growth is key. And I will, that's the thing I want to make sure we have available here and everybody is aware of, and is, and I do say it a lot, like you can do anything here, and I've said that out loud. Like if you so-and-so see an opportunity to start another division, I'm not going to stop you. Let's talk about it. Let's strategize about it. I'll hear you out. Like if it seems like it's something that can work, I'm willing to do that. Now that's easier said than done. Yeah. Like I can say that all day long. So I have to kind of peel that apart. If I notice somebody's maybe interested, or maybe they brought something up that's maybe a new opportunity, I gotta key into that. Yep. And figure out what that is and make sure they're comfortable enough to kind of say, hey, this is what I'm thinking. Yep. Because it's genuinely how I feel about it, is like we can, and that's what I want people to do here. Yep. If you see an opportunity to go over here and start this other thing up and you want to run it and lead it, I'm in. If it makes sense and it works and it pencils out, I'm in. So, but again, it's hard for people to take that and do something with it. So it's just kind of trying to key in on it. And, again, goes back to like understanding what people want. If I could see a spark in somebody, and it's like, oh, I could see you can do all kinds of stuff, and maybe they just want to do this, so maybe they're just satisfied with the role they have, and and that may change. Yeah. So it's, I think, just being keyed in and paying attention, and it's little things, maybe little things you notice that maybe you're not as satisfied as you were with what you were doing. Let's sit down and talk about it. You happy? You want to do something different? Where do you want to go? So, it's just a lot of being present, I think.
Yeah, for sure. So how do you mentioned it earlier, like you're not trying, and there's a previous guest that mentioned, like, she's like, I don't want to be on any fastest growing list. Like that's just not what, and she they're a GC as well. And, cause typically like that, I think there's somebody that made a post. I don't know if it was about ENR or something like that, but I commented mainly because it's what I hear from contractors. It's not that contractors don't go out of business necessarily because they have little work. It's because they bite off more than they can chew, and that just eats them up. And then now they're like, over leveraged, or like and they're just burning relationships, burning people. It's just burning cash. And so when it comes to growth, you mentioned like, hey, we're still wanting to grow, but it's just at a different sort of rate. And so I'm curious, how do you look at growth for your company holistically? And also, how do you look at growth for yourself as an executive? Like, because, I'm sure that that work ethic that you've developed doesn't necessarily just go away. Now you still want to grow and develop and mature into that next, or that, develop into that next phase. So how do you look at both of those, the company's growth as well as your own individual growth?
Yeah. So on the company side, we've just really found that going back to just, vetting out that client and making sure that there's somebody we want to work with, is important. There's always opportunity out there, like the open bid market is, I can have a PM just bidding on 20 projects a week. You know what I mean? But the success rate for us on that stuff is next to zero. It's a waste of time. So getting back to just fostering good relationships, showing them, if we get an opportunity to show them what we're capable of and our process, I think kind of speaks for itself. And then, like I said, it's kind of weird, we've been able to build a business around that relationship and that, that workload. So for me to say like, like we talked about this, like, next year I'm going to I want 50 more people. And I don't look at that anymore.
No.
There's so many, that's like 3 other podcasts deep where you could talk about the nuance of what that even means and what it looks like. And, financially and strategic, like there's a lot to that. No. And there's a lot of guys out there that are, I'm sure, obviously successful at it, but this way seems to work well for us. Is just slow. And, each of our like project managers have built and fostered some amazing relationships that they're now starting to build upon.
Yep.
So that, that alone is some positive growth for the company and for them as well. And just staying true to our services and what we provide. And those things kind of split all different directions. So I'm seeing some of our PMs kind of take off, and they've become the point of contact for a customer that maybe, was a point of contact for me. They're taking it, they're doing what we do, and now they're the person, and that thing's split off in all kinds of different directions. And it's become a little profit, business center for them. And they're feeling like they're growing something, which they are.
Yeah.
So that's our approach to, I don't know if I was too muddy of an answer, but,
what about for you?
My goal is just, I want to see everybody in here be successful. So, whatever I can do, however I need to fit in to continue to foster relationships with new clients, give them opportunity in different markets, because we've done some work in some different markets that, we're kind of excited about. And so that alone is, kind of inspiring, and, it's a change of change of path or change of course from what, we've been doing. So, and just getting out of their way and giving them the room to do what they need to do. And like I said, I'll be the guy just pushing the logs and sticks out of the way so they can be successful. So that is my goal. Wherever that leads, that's where I'll end up. But, I just want to create a stable, predictable environment for everybody that's dedicated themselves to work here. That's it. So that my role, wherever they need me to fit in, I will fit in. So
yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
So like I know I started off the conversation by talking about the trades and specifically like the investment that a lot of these companies have been making, and majority of them is AI, and it makes sense because they want these data centers built and continue to expand. How have you looked at like AI for like within your company?
Well, I struggle with it, but I also recognize that I need to embrace it. So, we will incorporate AI as we see fit to benefit the project. If it creates efficiency, awesome. I think the human connection is going to be a hard one to replace. Yeah. And I'm going to lean a little heavier on people just wanting to connect with people and have a dialogue and a conversation. Because I see some other companies out there where they're kicking it off, and you can log in and you can get assigned a avatar, and that avatar will be your person, and it's cool. Honestly, it's good
Within
on
construction?
yeah, yeah, good on them. And I'm sure it's the way of the future, but I am going to lean on a human connection. We'll incorporate AI as we need to, but I just don't think. I think people are gonna. That's gonna be a tough one to replace. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, totally. So then I guess AI aside, what are your thoughts on tech then? Just software and just all that?
Yeah, so one of the things I have to work on is I'm a total simple person, and we utilize what we need, but we're not bringing in our phone rings off the hook, and my email is constantly blown up with all these new tools. And some of it seems like it could be beneficial, but I think a lot of it is just, I don't think it's needed, to be honest with you. And I think getting back to, like I said, the fundamentals of construction, we're focusing on doing good work. I think we have inundated our staff with all these bolt-on things that have taken them away from focusing on doing what we need to do. And don't get me wrong, I think a lot of it is beneficial. And there's probably tools out there that if somebody showed me, I'd be like, oh my God, that'd be so awesome to have. But we use what we need.
Yep.
And if we're in need of something, I usually task somebody here that is more tech savvy than me that, hey, if there's a different way we should be doing this, or if there's an application we can use to make this more efficient or take more off of your plate, I'm in. But we're not just feeding the office full of tech and new this and new that and this app and that app, because what I've noticed over the years is it's just overwhelming for everybody. And we've kind of lost sight of doing good quality work, focusing on the fundamentals of what we do as a construction company, and just making sure we're turning over a good product and get all the other, stuff out of our way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I'm like a 180 out guy, which is not, it's something something I'm working on, which, sitting down with you is not something it's not in my nature to do. So this is me trying harder.
Yeah.
But
I think it's consistent with what you're saying about, like regardless of how AI is going to optimize, especially to maybe a lot of like more clerical or administrative stuff, like it will become more efficient with that. But I do think that that's where like human beings in the world of AI, I feel like human beings are still going to look forward to a human interaction.
I totally agree. I think they are now.
Yeah.
I really do. I think people are getting to a point where we're on our phones all the time. And I think the more we're dealing with non-human related interaction, I think people are going to have a desire to get back to it.
Yep.
And so, like I said, we're going to use the tools that make sense, that make it more efficient for us, but we're going to lean hard on just having a human connection with people. I think I think that'll be important.
Yeah, 100%. I definitely do agree. It's the people piece. 'Cause like you said, I mean, you said it perfectly. And I think it kind of like wraps the AI piece up. Is you're like, construction is simple. It's straightforward. What's hard is the nuances of the people, and then just all those sort of things. That's what makes it really tough. But otherwise, it's like the process from like, having nothing there to building it out. You just follow this order of sequence, it'll be good. But it's all the little nuances along the way where you're like, and sometimes even you need to combine a few people to kind of figure out, hey, how are we going to solve this?
Yeah. Yeah. And just, the collaboration is so huge. And I think it's definitely, it's clearly a woven into us as people that we need it. And, like I said before, man, I know there's some cool tools coming out and it'll be beneficial, but I just still don't think you can beat collaborating with another human to fix a problem, solve a problem, put something together, get excited about something, feel gratified together. I mean, how could you replicate that?
Yeah. Well, and honestly, I feel like part of me is like my hope or desire for like AI is that hopefully it removes a lot of the kind of soul sucking work that we all kind of have to do to make room for more of the things that are like, hey, I get to interact with Jake, or I get to go on this site, or I get to go do something that actually is more meaningful versus like, oh, I need to go do this thing.
Yeah.
Because it's necessary, but it's just soul sucking.
Right. And I'm with you on that one. Like, I'm all about those tools.
Yeah. So remove those. Yeah. But yeah, it is interesting because, especially too in the industry, there's a lot of, right now, the construction technology contact industry is just continues to grow, especially now with AI, speeding things up and what ends up happening. And it happens to me. I'll be first to admit it, is the shiny toy syndrome. I'm like, oh, that's cool. That's interesting. And then the utility, I'm like, well, I don't know if this actually solves the problem that I'm looking to solve. I'm just fascinated that it does this thing.
Right.
But does it actually help move things forward? And that's where I know certain contractors are now starting to cancel a lot of stuff because they're like, hey, I just need the fundamental thing, and then we'll figure it out from there. And typically a lot of these companies too will eventually add features, things like that too. Instead of having this isolated product that you need to, you need it from here. It's like, well, no, it's actually integrated now into this.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to, it gets the job done, and it's maybe not as pretty as that one, but that one costs $100,000 a year. Yeah. We've done the same thing. We have some tools that we use, and I think you lose sight as like a typical subscription.
Yep.
You lose sight of some of those things over time, and it's like, you start looking and auditing things. You're like, we're paying $1,600 for this a month. And you're like, there's got to be a different option. When you start adding those kinds of things up, it's not that they're not cool features, but again, we're looking at the bottom line here.
Yep.
Our costs continue to go up, and our business expenses continue to go up. And, obviously the state of Washington isn't helping with that.
Yeah.
But you start adding it all up, and it's like those subscriptions are expensive.
So if you reach this part of the recording, unfortunately, my whole video audio setup that all runs from my computer actually ended up stopping. It actually ended up slowing down. Rookie move on my end. But nonetheless, kind of recapping what he was saying is we were mainly talking about tech and things like that, how, it can obviously be efficient, and then also to maybe not as useful in other ways. I actually ended up asking him my last question, which was, what's the future of, DB General Contractors? And hopefully we can have Jake on in a future episode. Maybe he can share that as well as just more context as to what he's seeing in the market. But at the end of every episode, I love to open it up for my guests to plug in their website and what they're doing. And so to be able to do that within this specific video, like I normally do with every single one, is if you want to learn more about what Jake's doing and what he's building over at DB, I highly suggest you go check out his website, db-gc.com, or look up Jake Hatfield on LinkedIn. And I'm sure he'll get you taken care of. But thanks again, Jake, for being a great guest. And also, too, I've never done this before, but if you found value in this episode, please let us know in the comments. Also, please subscribe. That notifies you anytime we release a new podcast episode with whether it's a CEO, owner, founder, president of a construction company. So with that, we'll catch you in the next one.